Deep within the crystalline towers of the Citadel, the High Auditor Vrax sifted through the galactic registry. Earth was a footnote. Their planet was small, their biological lifespan was a mere blink of an eye compared to the Vun, and their technology was charming at best. They used combustion for heaven's sake. Status, Level 1, non-threatening, Vrax muttered, stamping the digital file. A race of soft-skinned empathetic bipeds. They focus on art, diplomacy, and hobbies. They are the galaxy's waiters. Useful for a laugh, useless in a supernova. Far on the rim, the Ilari civilization lived in a state of perpetual grace. They were fragile beings of light and song, communicating through harmonic frequencies that could heal wounds or grow forests. They had no military, only melody weaver protectors, who redirected solar winds with harps. When the Thraxian swarm, a nightmare of chitin and cold, hive-minded hunger, arrived, the Ilari didn't fight. They sang a song of mourning that broadcasted across every subspace frequency in the Orion Arm. It was a beautiful, heartbreaking plea for help that most empires simply muted. The Galactic Council met in emergency session. The Thraxians were consuming the Ilari star system, stripping the gas giants for fuel and the inner planets for minerals. The Ilari offer no tax revenue, no soldiers, and no strategic minerals, the Drakari ambassador hissed, his scales rippling. To intervene would cost us 3 battle fleets. It is a bad investment. One by one, the great powers of the galaxy turned their backs. Let the Thraxians eat, they decided. Better the small species die than our borders be threatened. Just as the first Thraxian harvester touched the atmosphere of the Ilari homeworld, a series of distorted warp signatures appeared on the long-range scanners. They weren't the clean, elegant jumps of warships. They were messy, noisy, and leaked radiation like a sieve. A small, rust-streaked fleet emerged. At the center was the Spirit of Geneva, a converted heavy lifter painted brilliant white with a red cross. Behind it were dozens of civilian defense ships, armed with nothing but welding lasers and mining drills. The Thraxian hive mind sent a standard dominance pulse, squishy biologicals. Vacate the sector. You are classified as non-threatening. We have no desire to waste ammunition on you. Captain Sarah Miller of the United Earth Relief Force looked at the sensor feed, Ilari mothers shielding their young with their own bodies as the Thraxian drones descended. She clicked her comms to all frequencies. This is Miller. We're not here for the sector. We're here for the people. And if you touch one more child, we're going to show you why we spent 3,000 years killing each other before we found something better to do. The Thraxians sent a wing of interceptors to brush away the human flies. They expected the humans to flee. Instead, the human ships accelerated. One mining vessel, the Iron Pig, used its massive industrial magnets to snag a Thraxian destroyer, pulling it into a collision course with another enemy ship. Human pilots, fueled by adrenaline and a terrifying sense of righteousness, performed maneuvers that ignored safety regulations. They weren't using warfare, they were using scrapping. They fought like cornered animals, but with the coordination of a professional sports team. When the human ships got close enough, they didn't fire torpedoes. They fired boarding pods. These weren't sleek shuttles, but reinforced steel spikes that slammed into the Thraxian hulls. Out stepped the peacekeepers, humans in bulky, makeshift exosuits wielding industrial plasma cutters and heavy-duty shotguns. In the tight corridors of the hive ships, the Thraxians' numbers meant nothing. The humans fought with a messy, chaotic violence. They used hammers, they used wrenches, they used their teeth if they had to. The Thraxians, who relied on logical combat patterns, had no counter for human crazy. While the battle raged in orbit, the Spirit of Geneva descended directly into the war zone on the planet's surface. They didn't land in a safe zone, they landed between the Thraxian army and the Ilari capital. They deployed massive, portable energy shields meant for protecting miners from solar flares. Human doctors and volunteers ran into the fire, grabbing Ilari wounded. When a Thraxian tank aimed at a group of children, a human volunteer stood in front of it, waving a white flag and a handheld detonator. "Try me," he whispered. The tank, unable to process the lack of self-preservation, hesitated for the 3 seconds it took for a human crop duster to drop a thermite charge on its roof. Back in the Citadel, the Council was watching the sensor data in horror. The non-threatening humans had successfully disabled 3 Thraxian dreadnoughts using nothing but creative engineering and sheer spite. "They are not fighting for territory," Vrax whispered, his eyes wide. "They are fighting for a concept. They are losing ships, losing lives, and they aren't retreating. They are getting angrier." The Thraxian hive mind, for the first time in 10,000 years, felt something it didn't recognize: confusion. Then, as the humans hacked into their synaptic network to blast a recording of a baby crying, that confusion turned into fear. The Thraxian swarm broke. They retreated, fleeing from the terrifying monkeys, who didn't know when to die. As the human fleet, battered and burning, began to treat the Ilari survivors, the High Auditor Vrax opened the Galactic Registry. He deleted the Level 1 classification. He didn't just make them Level 5. He highlighted the entire entry for humanity in a pulsing, blood-red warning. New status, Level Omega, do not provoke. Under the notes, he wrote, individually weak. Collectively insane. Will burn the galaxy to save a stranger. Leave them to their coffee and poetry, for the sake of us all. The dust on the Ilari homeworld had barely settled when the first, official, delegations arrived. The Drakari and the Vun, who had refused to help, now sent their gleaming golden frigates, laden with humanitarian aid that was 2 weeks too late. They found Captain Sarah Miller sitting on the ramp of her battered ship, sharing a thermos of synthetic coffee with an Ilari elder. When the Drakari ambassador stepped out, draped in jewels, Miller didn't stand up. She just pointed her dirty thumb at the horizon. "The war is over," she said coldly. "We've already done the heavy lifting. You're just here for the photo op. Go home." The Ilari did something no one expected. They didn't thank the Council, they renounced their seat in the Galactic Federation. Instead, they pledged a life bond to humanity. This was a biological and psionic contract older than the stars. Suddenly, Earth, the Level 1 backwater, had exclusive access to Ilari harmonic technology. This wasn't weapons, it was something better. It was the ability to repair ecosystems, to heal genetic diseases, and to communicate across galaxies without delay. The poets of Earth had just become the most technologically significant species in the Orion Arm, not through conquest, but through a hug. The Thraxian hive mind was not used to losing. Deep in their dark sector, the Queen generated a new strain of warrior, the exterminator. These were faster, stronger, and designed specifically to counter human biology. They were sent to strike Earth directly. If the mammals love others, they will weaken when their own nest burns, the Queen reasoned. But she made a fatal mistake. She assumed that the relief force was the extent of human capability. She didn't know about the bold dogs. The retired human veterans who had been waiting for a reason to get back into the cockpit. The Thraxian fleet didn't even reach Neptune. As they dropped out of warp in the Oort cloud, they found not a defenseless planet, but a graveyard of ancient human satellites that suddenly came to life. It turned out that humans had been cleaning space for decades, but what they were actually doing was building a massive, hidden sensor grid. The Thraxians were met with kinetic kill vehicles. Basically, giant tungsten poles dropped from orbit. No lasers, no shields, just 10 tons of metal moving at 1% the speed of light. The Thraxian exterminators were turned into scrap metal before they could even see the sun. The most terrifying thing for the galaxy wasn't the human weapons, it was the human philosophy. After destroying the Thraxian fleet, the humans didn't execute the survivors. They launched life rafts. They picked up the half-dead insectoids, put them in pressurized tanks, and fed them. Why? The High Auditor asked in a panicked subspace call. They tried to kill your children. Sarah Miller, now an admiral, looked into the camera. Because if we become like them to beat them, then there's nobody left worth saving. We're keeping them as guests. And then we're sending them back with a message. The message sent back to the Thraxian Queen wasn't a threat. It was a datacore containing the entire history of human cinema, music, and art, along with images of the Thraxian survivors playing board games with human sailors. The humans called it cultural contamination. They knew that the hive mind relied on total control and the idea that all other life was food. By showing the workers that they could be friends and individuals, the humans didn't attack the Thraxian ships, they attacked their social structure. Within months, the Thraxian Empire began to suffer from the first thing it had ever feared, a revolution. Earth refused to join the council. We don't want to vote on your taxes or your borders, the human representative announced. We just have one new rule for the galaxy. We call it the play nice doctrine. If we see a big species bullying a small one, or a rich system starving a poor one, we're coming. We won't bring an army. We'll bring a fleet of janitors and poets who will disassemble your civilization and rebuild it into something kinder. Consider yourselves warned. The galaxy, once ruled by cold logic, was now terrified of human empathy. Earth became the neutral capital of the universe. Not for war, but for knowledge. Huge space stations were built around Saturn, housing the Library of Soul. Species from across the stars traveled there to learn the human way. They studied how to disagree without killing, how to love across biological barriers, and how to make a perfect espresso. The High Auditor Vrax eventually retired and spent his days in the library, teaching young Vuns that non-threatening was actually the highest level of power a species could achieve. But behind the scenes, humanity stayed sharp. Hidden in the asteroid belts were fleets of ships that no one ever saw. They weren't for conquest, they were for protection. They were the silent vanguard. Whenever a new, aggressive species emerged from the dark of the void, they didn't find a helpless galaxy. They found a human probe that played a simple melody, the first song the Ilari ever sang to the humans. It was a reminder, we are here. We are kind. But do not make us stop being kind. The story ends with a view of Earth from the moon. 1,000 different alien ships are docked in orbit, their lights twinkling like a second set of stars. There is no noise of war, only a harmonic hum, a mix of human radio waves and Ilari songs. Humanity was once classified as non-threatening. And in a way, they still were. They were only a threat to those who wanted to destroy the peace. For everyone else, they were simply home.